The Rev. John Darsey of Redeemer Church of Madison in Madison, GA, which has multiple layers of armed security. Kevin D. Liles for the New York Times. Before the church massacre in Sutherland Springs, Texas, there was the church massacre in Charleston, South Carolina. It was enough to make the Rev. John Darsey think that his young Georgia church needed a security plan, one that involved defenders with firearms. So his church, Redeemer Church of Madison, hired 3 uniformed sheriff's deputies for each Sunday service, 1 directing traffic, 1 in the parking lot, and 1 right by the door. This is the visible deterrent, the first line of defense. The second, more subtle layer is an in-house security team of church members with military or law enforcement backgrounds, all carrying concealed weapons. Inside the spacious modern sanctuary, where some 500 people come every Sunday morning, the team members split the room in 2 quadrants, with one always keeping a bird's-eye view from the back of the room, on the riser with the lighting equipment. The third layer of protection is one that Mr. Darsey knows is there, though he has trouble quantifying it. He estimated that about 20 to 25 of his flock were concealing a weapon on any given Sunday. "Now that's just the ones I know about," he said. "And there were other weapons around. Including here," he said, opening a drawer of his big wooden desk. Around the country, a string of threats and attacks in recent years have led many houses of worship to take steps to secure their sanctuaries. And after 26 people were killed at First Baptist Church of Sutherland Springs, Texas, last Sunday, one of the worst mass shootings in American history and the deadliest ever at a church, many more have begun looking hard at whether God's protection might need some armed backup. In Plano, Texas, the Prestonwood Baptist Church, a megachurch with more than 43,000 members and a model of modern-day vigilance, with off-duty police, private security, and cameras monitored 24 hours a day, offered to hold a seminar on church security after the shooting last Sunday. Within 48 hours, more than 250 ministers and lay leaders from more than 100 churches in 4 states had signed up. This has caused every church in the country to think about the security of their people, and how that has to be of utmost importance, said the Rev. Mike Buster, Prestonwood's executive pastor. Investigators at the First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs, Texas, where 26 people were shot to death on Sunday. Callie Richmond for the New York Times. But securing a house of worship poses very different challenges from securing other public places like airports, schools or theaters. For one thing, most American congregations are relatively small, and lack the staff or the budget for extensive security. 2/3 of the churches in the United States have fewer than 100 regular attendees, adults and children combined, according to data from the National Congregation Study, and in many cases, only part-time or volunteer ministers. Just as important, many clergy members say that the very mission of houses of worship leaves them conflicted over imposing security measures. A church, temple or mosque should be a welcoming place, they say, with doors kept wide open to strangers and those who are hurting. Many say they have ministered to people in all kinds of crises, homelessness, drug addiction, domestic abuse, or trouble with law, without being sure whether they are intent on harm. The safe thing to do is to isolate yourself from these people, but that's the wrong thing to do for a church, said the Rev. Bart Barber, pastor of the First Baptist Church of Farmersville, Texas, who wrote an essay for Christianity Today about the security dilemma for small rural churches. "We're not going to cordon off the block, and make people show their ID and do a fingerprint background check to get into the worship service," Mr. Barber said. "Because the very people we're afraid of are also the people we are here to help." But increasingly, clergy members have felt it necessary to have extra eyes, and sometimes weapons, in their open doors. In the last 5 years alone, shootings have occurred at churches, mosques, a Sikh temple and a Jewish community center, forcing religious leaders nationwide to confront the issue of safety. Consultants have started businesses focused on church security, and the federal government has offered limited grants for houses of worship to install cameras and hire guards. It was a security camera image from a Manual African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston that helped the authorities quickly identify Dylan Rufay as the gunman. Church Executive magazine recently suggested that church leaders invite local police officers to stop by and use the restrooms or meeting rooms, in order to acquaint them with the church's layout and leadership before an emergency arises. In areas of the country where many people own and carry guns, church security is complicated by the question of whether to allow or even encourage guns in church. A funeral service for one of the victims of the shooting at the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina, in June 2015. Travis Dove for the New York Times. Texas law allows houses of worship to bar firearms, and many do, posting signs saying that carrying guns onto the property is prohibited. The United Methodist Church adopted a resolution suggesting that churches post such signs in 2016, part of a larger statement on ending gun violence. Mormon church policy says that carrying firearms is inappropriate except as required by officers of law. All week, since the massacre in the pews in Sutherland Springs, the Rev. Brady Martin said that members of his church, Temple Baptist Church, in Gainesville, Texas, have been coming to his office to discuss how to protect the church while still being welcoming. When asked whether the sign posted out front announcing that the church doesn't allow the open carrying of firearms, showing a gun with a slash through it, could actually be sending the message that the church is vulnerable. That was something I hadn't actually thought through, he said, though he added that the church was not reconsidering its open carry policy. It does allow concealed firearms. We are not thinking that everybody should open carry. That would be a security nightmare. He said that his church would send 12 people to the security seminar at Prestonwood. In the meantime, his volunteer security team is considering stationing members in the parking lot before Sunday services, not just inside. The Rev. Robert Jeffress, pastor of a Dallas megachurch, First Baptist Dallas, said in an interview on Fox News this week that he felt safer knowing that a quarter to half of his congregation carries concealed weapons to services on Sunday. If somebody tries that in our church, he said of the attack in Sutherland Springs, they might get one shot off, or two shots off, and that's the last thing they'll ever do in this life. Mr. Darsey, the pastor at Redeemer in Georgia, acknowledged that some might find it odd that so many deadly weapons were being brought into a building dedicated to worshiping a man the book of Isaiah calls the Prince of Peace. But he cited Romans chapter 13, which allows earthly authorities to serve as agents of wrath to bring punishment on the wrongdoer. There was always a chance, he said, that someone who meant to fire a weapon to protect innocents could end up harming the innocents themselves, which would be a nightmare scenario for his church. I'm not so Southern and fundamentalist in my thinking that I don't see the other side of that issue, he said. But it is what it is. Jason Singleton, 36, is among the members who brings a handgun to Redeemer, in his case, strapped to his torso with a belly band. He said he would never pull the gun if there was merely a fight. There had to be an armed attacker, shooting innocents. It would be a last resort, he said. If I took someone's life it would be because mine was about to be took or someone else's, and I think I'd be okay with answering for that, in the by and by.